And there was a real contrast between the Raiders teams that he coached and the way that he was. And I know we say from time to time that the team is the reflection of the coach. I think the Raiders were the reflection of their owner back in the 70s, and Madden wasn't that renegade. They had a lot of renegade players, and he did a pretty good job of keeping them as under control as he possibly could. But one of the moments that stands out, and there's a story that MDS posted earlier today about the moment in the 1978 preseason when Darryl Stingley, then with the Patriots, suffered a serious debilitating injury that would paralyze him for the remainder of his life after a hit that was illegal at the time from Raiders defensive back Jack Tatum. Madden went to the hospital. The game was played in Oakland. That was during the first Raiders stint in Oakland from the 60s and 70s and into the early 90s. Madden went to the hospital to wait for Darryl Stingley's family to arrive, and he was upset because Chuck Fairbanks, who was the coach of the Patriots at the time, had gotten on the plane and flown back to New England with the Patriots. And he actually, and this comes from a New York Times article in 1979, Madden got someone on the airport on the phone and said, get Chuck Fairbanks off that plane and get him to the hospital. I mean, that was the level of care that he had for the men who played the game. And, Chris, that would manifest itself. And this is one of the unknown things about John Madden. And I collected a lot of examples last night. I'm going to write about it when we're finished today. After he retired from broadcasting, he was instrumental in the efforts to make football safer in many different ways. He was adamant, and in many ways he was a voice in the wilderness because the football people were reluctant to change. He had been very vocal about many things, especially as it relates to head trauma, about getting players off the field, keeping players off the field. When in doubt, leave them out is a phrase that he was pushing to the NFL after it became obvious what the long-term effects of head trauma could be. He was at the forefront of so many things that the NFL has done over the past 10 years to try to make the game safer. And one of the things I'm committed to doing in memory of John Madden is to make sure people understand that. Because you know what? There's a lot of resistance to the things that are being done to make football safer. And maybe if people realize John Madden was the one carrying the flag for it, maybe people will accept it a little bit more readily than they have.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe they will. Again, he was a visionary. He's ahead of his time as far as just the personality and what we have in the NFL today. He really was. And I didn't know that about him. I did not. But I was sitting there watching like NFL Network last night, and they're doing Madden stuff. And it's just, again, I think you could just see anybody that's ever crossed the guy just was so impressed and had such a love or liking of John Madden. And, of course, his old teammates, his old players, I should say, who he coached. You could tell there's just a respect that's a little beyond the normal head coach who, this is the head coach and he's, the general, the sergeant. We listen to him. There seems always to me that his players had a little bit more of a personal feeling towards their head coach maybe than other players throughout history towards their, NFL coaches. And that, I think, speaks a lot, too. He obviously was a guy that had his door open so players could come in and talk. He understood who they were on and off the field, like you said. I mean, that cast of characters he had to deal with in the Oakland Raiders, that football team, that would take a special type of coach. Somebody that's able to blend a bunch of personalities together and probably deal with a little drama and go, okay, I'll just, swipe that under the rug today. It wasn't that bad of a drama. We'll just act like it didn't happen, whatever. He had the golden touch that way with people, and I think that's what everybody saw in John Madden, certainly. And, that's interesting about the safety of the game stuff, Mike. That's one I did not know, but not shocked to hear, because there's a caring of people from John Madden that you always felt.
Well, and I think he was the embodiment of the idea that football was what football was, and now we have learned that football presents a level of risks that we maybe weren't as aware of, as sensitive to as we should have been, and that's what pushed him to advocate for ways to limit the kind of contact that could cause those problems, even if it's only happening in a small percentage of players later in their lives. If it is introducing risk of long-term trauma, we need to find ways to tweak the game to make it safer for everybody who plays it, to the point where I can recall a suggestion that traced back to John Madden, and maybe it was more of a prediction as to where the game was going, but no more three-point stance. No, can you imagine how different the game would look if there were no three-point stances, if it was all two-point stances across the line of scrimmage, offense and defense? But if that's the only way to take those subconcussive hits, that was a term that became popular 10, 12 years ago, where you don't get a concussion, but your head got banged around inside your helmet because you fired off the line of scrimmage, as you were always taught to do as an offensive lineman when run blocking, a defensive lineman when attacking the offensive line. That helmet is going to hit another helmet, and you're going to have a small injury to your brain that doesn't give you a concussion, but it's not good that that's happening to your brain. That's how sensitive he was to what this meant for the sport and what it meant for the men who played it, that maybe we do need to pivot to a two-point stance so you're not firing off head first and hitting someone else head first. And even if no one sees stars after that hit, it isn't good for them that it happened. And I think his personality and his sensitivity helped contribute to a lot of the changes that we've seen in recent years to make the game safer. And that's how I got in touch with someone who was familiar with the things he did in that regard. And I've got a long list of documents and memos and other things I'm going to parse through. And I want to give him the credit he deserves, because we assume that once he retired from NBC after the 2008 season at Super Bowl 43, it was just, no, he became the first chairman of that subcommittee that consists of coaches that consults with the competition committee in an effort to kind of bridge the gap between, you know, the people who aren't in the trenches coaching teams and making football what it is, get coaches involved, get their voice at the table. And he was the guy who was in charge of that at first after he was out of broadcasting. And, of course, the video game continued and will continue. I mean, that game's always going to be around. Always. As long as the NFL's around, that game's going to be around. And I know there are kids out there, and I may have said this recently, there are kids who didn't know who John Madden was. And I'm hoping that they're getting a lesson in who John Madden was last night, today, and tomorrow and beyond. But I've had kids tell me that they think it's called Madden because it makes you mad when you play it. And I mean, if you're a kid and you don't know. Yeah. You don't know. John Madden's picture's not on it. See, it wasn't about him. It was about him early on. Right. And I think that was more of a marketing thing. Yeah. But, you know, after 5-10 years, it became about finding a player who was the most famous, or one of the most famous players in football at the time. He disappeared from it. His voice disappeared from it. His likeness disappeared from it, and it became about the game, and it became about the players. But, boy, that brings back some memories. John Madden Football 92 was the first really, really great one. I had him all the way back to the first one, but 92 was when it became something magical. And you know, people want to complain about it because, it's not any different. But you know what? Why should it be? I get it every year. And, you know, I play it all the time. I play it when I ride my exercise bike so I can, you know, enjoy Christmas meals and eat turducken and whatnot. And it's awesome. It's real football. And I learn a lot about football strategy and clock management and decision-making from that simulation, from those reps of over and over and over again, being in those situations when you're down 14 and you score a touchdown and you go for 2 to cut it to 6. I know you love that play. Yeah. But it's a great way to fully understand the way football works. I mean, it's the ultimate gift that he's going to give to generations, where you can, in a way like you never could when I was growing up. The only way you learned football when I was growing up was electric football, where you spent 20 minutes lining them up and 30 seconds watching them run around in circles, and 20 more minutes lining them up and 30 seconds watching them run around in circles, and you didn't learn anything. Right. With Madden, you really do learn how football works at whatever age you decide to start playing.
No, 100%. I mean, I've played a handful of times, you know, this year against my little boy, who's 11. And yeah, he vaguely knows who John Madden is because I've explained it to him. He's got a father who's obsessed with football, and I've pointed him out when I've shown shown my little Phil, Big Phil's old games. He's of course heard John Madden. I go, hey, that's John Madden. That's your damn video game right there. That's the guy. I mean, just again, the knowledge the guy had of the sport, the generations of players he got to see and be around. It's special that way. And it's fitting that the video game, came his way and became such a big thing because who better to have that, with all the famous sayings that he had during the broadcast of a game. And, of course, through the 70s, all the players he got to see, now announcing games and getting to see all those players, on a weekly basis at practice and all of that. I mean, the knowledge was unbelievable, let alone, to me, I don't know. He just, like you said, the NFL was great, I know, before him, but I do think he brought it to another level of for lack of a better way to say it, spectacle that maybe it was not before that. And that's where, again, I go back to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving became more about the game. It was more like, oh, man, here's Madden. He's going to be silly today. He's probably going to eat some turkey. Who's he going to give a turkey leg to? How many freaking times is he going to, circle the turkey and then tell us some crazy story about, the turkey's life before that? I mean, he was amazing that way, to where it became a thing not only to watch the game, but like, hey, everybody, shut up. I want to hear what John Madden's talking about. He's saying something important or he's saying something silly. Either way, you wanted to listen to it. And I think that's where he really brought the game to another level, to something you said earlier. It could be anybody. Hey, my Aunt Wendy. It's John Madden. She'll be all over that and loves, like you said, how he explained the football game, let alone the wormhole stories he might go down every now and then to make everybody laugh. I mean, that's where it just went to another level, and there's been nobody like him since, and there won't be anybody like him going forward.
I'm told that we have some old sound and video of John Madden having some fun with the turkey carcass that was somehow amalgamated with a chicken and a duck, and I still don't understand how it all works. But here's a little John Madden on non-football matters of great importance, like turkey and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, it's really 5 different things. It's a chicken, a duck, a turkey, and 2 kinds of dressings.
And are you going to have one on your Thanksgiving table?
Yeah, I'm going to have one. I have to bring it though, but because here's a picture of one.
Turducken.
Yeah,
picture. That is it.
And you see, you cut it like right down here. See, and then this is what it looks like inside. See, so you got turkey, then duck, and then dressing, and then chicken. And then you just have to do it that way, or if any of that makes sense.
Now, can I get some hoisin sauce with that? That's unbelievable.
That's amazing. Al
John
didn't know
Madden,
what to do.
Not familiar with the concept of a knife.
Apparently not. Apparently he had another skill. He had a pinky finger that was as sharp as a knife. That was amazing. And Al was great too. Al didn't know how to react to any of it, and that's what's amazing about John Madden right there. You just never knew where it was going to go.
Well, and if you worked with John Madden, you were his straight man. You were the foil. You were the guy, and whether it was Al Michaels or Pat Summerall, and they both played that role perfectly and let John be who he was. And, one of the great things, and Chris, this is where you have something in common with him. He never took himself seriously. And he didn't care if he said something goofy, and he didn't care if he said something incorrect. He just kind of kept going. And that reminds me of one of my all-time great memories of John Madden. When Anthony Munoz was early in his career and John Madden was doing a Bengals game, John Madden wasn't familiar with the concept of the tilde, and he was calling him Munus. And I got a buddy, and we still laugh about Munus, until somebody gently told John Madden that's not how it's pronounced, and he just, he was who he was, and there were no pretenses. I think that's one of the reasons he was so likable. There was never a sense that he was anyone other than who he was. He wasn't trying to be anyone other than who he was, and then when he started talking, he made the game fun. Yeah. That's the key word. It's supposed to be fun, and I know that our role delves into all sorts of things that aren't fun from time to time, because there are things about the game that I don't think should be hidden, and they should be talked about, and they should be tried to make better. But when it was time to broadcast a game, it was all about fun, and he made it fun. And
yeah, right.
People like to have fun. What a shocker! Human beings like to have fun.
Yeah.
So you turn on a football game and you want to have fun, and he made it fun.
He did that, and here's the other thing that always jumps out to me when I listen to old telecasts of games, never really negative on players or anything, which is, again, I know there's a lot of announcers out there, but just had this way, that I appreciated, of course, growing up as a son of a quarterback who was, of course, under a microscope in New York and all of that, where, I could watch a game and my dad might not be playing good and he might have thrown 2-3 interceptions, but it didn't become like a roast session. He explained what went on and, just had a good way of going, Simms is having a tough day today. It just said they're making it tough on him. And but it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to show the whole world, the dumb crap he's doing or what this player's doing to make these mistakes, and let's all pile on too. He had a great way of kind of explaining to you the guy wasn't doing that well, but make it sound like, again, it wasn't personal to that guy, and never crossed the line of going, whoa, that was a little too far. He actually absolutely eviscerated that person there. He was amazing that way too. And that just goes back to, he just had this jolly smile way about him that was just infectious. It really was. And so it's crazy. It really is. I guess I've always been preparing myself for this day a little bit, thinking it would come at some point, but it just was a little shocking. It kind of came out of left field yesterday.
The perspective, though, and you make a good point as it relates to, a quarterback who's thrown a bunch of interceptions. You can bash the guy who threw the bunch of interceptions, and fans want to bash that guy, especially fans of that team. But on the other side of the ball, you got some defensive players that are making some pretty good plays.
That's
right. I mean, look at the Christmas game. We could either say Baker Mayfield stinks because he threw 4 interceptions, or we could say, hey, Rasul Douglas, he's got something special going on. Look at how he's diagnosing that play. Look at how he's making it happen. And there was always something positive to whatever happened on the field, because if it was bad for one team, it was good for the other team. So instead of poking a stick at the team or the player who had something bad happen, he reveled in the good thing that happened.
He really did.
It like I said at the top of the show, it really felt like a family member for so many of us. And I don't think he'd ever believe it. I think if you were sitting down having this conversation with him, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, any time in his life, to explain to him the impact he eventually would have on the sport in so many different ways, the number of lives he would touch, even if he never got within 1,000 feet of any of those people or 1,000 miles of them, through his voice, through his name, through his image, through his video game. There's never been anyone like him in the NFL, and at least in our lifetimes, there will never be another one who comes even close. Maybe 100, 200, 300 years from now, there'll be another John Madden. But I think he was one of a kind, and I think there's a chance there's never going to be another John Madden.
Yeah.
For as long as we survive as a species and football is part of our existence and experience, I don't think there's ever going to be another John Madden.
No, I don't. It's a special person with a special touch, unbelievable presence. One of those presents where it's just like, I've never met this guy, but damn, look at him across the field, and he's the only guy I can look at, and I can hear him. There's other great people around, but damn, I'm looking at him. And there just was something about him. Yes. And obviously something about him. Again, to work for Al Davis, coach those Raiders teams, there must have been something there that Al saw, knowing that, wait, I'm tough to work for one, because I'm the owner, and damn, I know football too, and it'll be, second guessing everything you do. But also, we know Al Davis, he didn't care about, players maybe that were a little rough around the edges or had personalities. To me, that says it all. That tells you that he felt like John Madden had a special touch with people and doing that. And that's where, again, we were all got the gift of, after he left coaching, to kind of see that in action with him with the microphone for all those years. And, yep, John Madden, the man, the myth, the legend, he is amazing. And sad to see him go. And I know we're going to play a few more clips from him throughout the day so we can have some fun with it.
I'm looking at back to the Darryl Stingley story that we were talking about earlier. And then we talked about how he called the airport to get Chuck Fairbanks off the plane because he thought the coach of the Patriots should be there given this serious injury that Darryl Stingley had suffered during a preseason game. And actually, as they were getting ready to operate on Darryl Stingley, Madden was in scrubs. And he got up to Darryl Stingley and he said to him, everything's going to be all right, before he went into surgery. I mean,
yeah, it's sad. Tells you what he is.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.